Welcome to the first session of our Privacy and Compliance series. My name's Ollie, and I'm a solutions engineer here on the Google for Education team, working with our biggest customers all across Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
And I'm Sarah, a privacy program manager in Google Cloud. My team also covers the EMEA region, and we spend our time working to ensure privacy controls are built into our services, as well as supporting our customers in navigating complex privacy regulatory matters.
Now, this series aims to take the really complex topic of compliance, privacy, and security and make it a little easier to understand. Today, we're going to be talking about how we process your data when you use Google Workspace for Education. Now, Sarah, what can you tell us about our privacy commitments to customers?
As a Google Workspace for Education customer, you control your data. You own your customer data, not Google. We never sell customer data or service data to third parties. We do not use customer data or service data for ads targeting. All data is encrypted at rest and in transit by default. We are transparent about data collection and use. We never give any government entity backdoor access. We prioritize the privacy of our customers. We build strong security technologies into our products to protect the data you trust us with.
Thanks for the overview, Sarah. So we hear from customers all the time that their data needs to stay within the EU. Could you talk us through Google's approach to that from a legal and compliance perspective?
Absolutely, Ollie. So just to be clear, the GDPR does not prohibit the transfer of personal data outside of the EU. However, if there are transfers to third countries, there must be an equivalent level of protection of personal data.
Okay, so how do we ensure that in practice?
Basically, for the type of transfers in Google Workspace, the GDPR sets out some ways to transfer personal data to third countries in a compliant manner. One of them is if there is an adequacy decision, and another is using appropriate safeguards. When there is an adequacy decision, it means that the European Commission has decided that a certain country has an adequate level of protection. This is the case of Switzerland, Argentina, Japan, just to name a few. To these countries, personal data can flow without additional measures. This is what we had also with the Privacy Shield, which allowed transfers of personal data to the US if you satisfied certain obligations. You must have heard about Schrems II.
Indeed, I have.
Yeah, so Schrems II was the European Court of Justice decision that invalidated the Privacy Shield, which resulted us in not relying on it anymore for transfers of personal data to the US.
So in that case, what do we do now?
Government negotiators in the US and Europe have been working on an announced EU-US framework that will replace the Privacy Shield and will allow transfers between the EU and the US. Even then, for Google, these and similar standards will serve as a floor, not a ceiling, supporting the high standards of protection we offer our users and customers. For now, we can rely on the appropriate safeguards we use today. One of the appropriate safeguards foreseen in the GDPR are the Standard Contractual Clauses, or SCCs, approved by the European Commission, which gives entities in the EU a useful tool to help them comply with data protection laws, both for their activities within the EU and for transferring personal data outside of it. Google has adopted standard contractual clauses. In addition, we offer a wide range of cutting-edge additional measures that you may wish to implement, such as data regions, client-side encryption for Workspace for Education Standard and Plus customers.
Gotcha. So allow me to use a little analogy here. It sounds a bit like when I used to stay over at friends' houses when I was a kid. My mum probably had a list of parents that she trusted me to stay at without any questions. But maybe there were a few houses where she wasn't so sure. So she would be happy for me to stay there, but might call up their parents and find out where I'd be sleeping, or set some arrangements like agreeing on a bedtime, or no sweets after 8 p.m.
That's a great analogy, but the European Commission and Google make it even easier, Ollie. as the standard contractual clauses, if they existed somehow in your sleepover example, can mean that your mom wouldn't have to call every parent to go through every painstaking detail of the sleepover. But instead, she would just know that the other parent was following a standard set of agreements.
Okay, that makes great sense. Thanks. And actually, I know that the global distribution of data is one of Google's key strengths, as it can reduce latency and the risk of our customers not being able to actually access their data. Having customer data distributed across multiple data centers means that in the event of any disruption, we shift data access automatically and smoothly to another data center, so that our users can keep working uninterrupted. Also, you may not know that each drive file is actually chunked into multiple parts, which are then distributed across different servers with their own unique encryption keys. So combine that with the rigorous physical security that exists at our data centers, and it's an incredibly secure and private place to keep your data. I actually remember when I was a teacher heading into the server room at my school and being shocked at how easy it would have been for someone to come on site and just walk away with all of our student data. So in the same way that a school might trust a bank to keep their money safe, they can also trust our data centers to help keep their data safe and secure. And it's worth noting that if customers wish, users with Google Workspace for Education Standard or Plus editions can choose to keep certain customer data at rest within one of our European data centers. Okay, so we've talked about international data transfers. Could you tell me a little bit about what type of data is actually processed when users use our services?
Yes, so there are two distinct types of data that we consider across Google Workspace. You have customer data and you have service data. Customer data, which also includes customer personal data, is the data our customers provide to Google when they access Google Workspace and the data they create while using our services. Each customer owns their customer data. We also secure service data. This is the information Google collects and generates while providing and administering Google Workspace, which is critical to help ensure the security and availability of our services. It includes information about security settings, operational details, and billing information.
Okay, and I assume these are governed differently?
Yeah, that's correct, Ollie. A data controller is who determines the means and purposes of processing of personal data, basically who determines the why and the how. We act as a data controller for service data, which is governed by our cloud privacy notice, and we act as a data processor for customer personal data. Customers, as controllers, instruct us on how they want us to process their customer personal data, and this is governed by the Cloud Data Processing Addendum. This means that since the customer is acting here as a controller, they are responsible for complying with all the controller obligations in the GDPR, like when they need to conduct a data protection impact assessment or DPIA when using our services. We'll dedicate a whole session to this later in the series, outlining how we support our customers to complete this. Google Workspace for Education offers a smooth integration with other additional services such as YouTube and Maps. One of the questions we often get asked is the Cloud Data Processing Addendum or CDPA covering and governing these additional services? And the answer is no. The CDPA governs Google Workspace core services. The other services such as YouTube, Maps are designed as consumer services and they are governed by the general consumer terms. Ollie, can you tell us a bit more about the difference between the core services and the additional services?
Yeah, of course. So the core workspace services include things like Gmail, Google Drive, Classroom, Calendar, and Meet, and they're governed by a specific set of terms of service, which you can view online. And these are different to those that govern regular consumer users with a gmail.com account. These services are also governed by our new Cloud Data Processing Addendum, like you mentioned before. And we also have a Google Workspace for Education implementation guide, which outlines our suggested best practice when deploying and configuring these services to help you meet data protection and compliance needs. Now, Google also has a plethora of other services which aren't part of our Google Workspace offering. These are called additional services and they're governed by different service terms. mostly the ones applicable to consumer services. There are some crucial differences between core and additional services are turned off by default, and it's up to our customers to enable these for their users if they wish. These are services like Google Pay and Google Ads, where we actually don't allow access for Google Workspace for Education users who've been designated as under 18. And for some other services like YouTube, you can actually enable under 18 users to sign in to watch videos, but we won't allow them to upload content or see and interact with comments on videos, for example.
What about advertisements? Can students see adverts in these tools?
Great question. So Google Workspace for Education users won't see any adverts when using our core services, but they may see ads in our additional services. But unlike a consumer Gmail account, we never process data of Google Workspace for Education users to build up advertising profiles. So let me explain with an example if that's okay. Sarah, have you ever searched for a pair of trainers and all you see for weeks is adverts for shoes?
Yeah, that happens to me all the time.
Right, and that's because if you're using your personal account, Google builds a profile of what you like and serves you adverts that it thinks you might like too. But for users of Google Workspace for Education accounts, that's not the case. While some data may still be collected if a user with a Google Workspace for Education account uses one of our additional services, that's if it's even enabled for them, like the fact that they watched a YouTube video, for example. This data is never used to target ads or create an advertising profile of that user. So if a student searches for trainers as part of a school project, they won't be served adverts from shoe retailers as a result.
That's really good to know, Ollie, and I'm sure that will help our schools when they carry out their data protection impact assessments. So we've talked about how we help to keep our customers' data secure in our secure data centers. But one question I hear from customers in Europe all the time is what happens if a government agency requests access to their data?
That's a really good question. So to help explain it, let's do a little bit of role play if that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so let's imagine that you are the IT manager at your school and you've chosen to keep your information on a local server and not on the servers of cloud providers like Google.
Okay, based on what you said earlier, Ollie, that doesn't sound like the most secure solution to me, but I'll play along.
Great, thank you so much. Now, let's imagine that for some really unlikely reason, you receive a request from a government agency for the data from one of your students.
Firstly, I don't even know who would handle that request at my school.
Exactly, and it's important to note that we actually follow policy and advise governments making requests to first approach the customer directly before making a request of Google. But if you need support in handling a request or we receive one directly, here at Google, we have a dedicated specialist cross-functional team tasked with carefully evaluating and processing requests for user data while upholding the law and protecting users' privacy and security.
Okay, so how do I determine what data to hand over?
That's a great question. So are you going to just give them every email that user has ever sent or all of their files? At Google, we have a team of experts who are tasked with carefully assessing and evaluating requests to ensure that any disclosure of user data is done in accordance with applicable law and Google's policies.
And what if I think that it's an unlawful request?
Great question. So do you have a legal team at your school to handle this? At Google, we have a team of lawyers who challenge inappropriate legal requests for customer data, including objecting to certain requests and even litigating with the government if necessary.
That makes a lot of sense.
Agreed. And so we actually publish statistics on government requests for data that we've received online in our transparency report. And we know in practice that these kinds of requests are typically personal consumer accounts and not enterprise or education-based accounts. In fact, in another session in this series, we'll go through some technical controls at schools' disposal to help students and teachers use the services in an appropriate and compliant manner, further helping to mitigate this already small risk. Even simple measures like restricting external sharing of files or sending or receiving emails with external users can go a really long way here.
I look forward to that.
Me too. Well, that's all we have time for in this session. Thanks so much for your insights, Sarah. I look forward to finding out more from you around privacy and compliance in our other sessions. And we understand that the world of compliance constantly changes, and we are dedicated to work with our customers and regulators.
You can find out more information if you need it on our website and our blog. Thanks for watching.